All right, people, here we are for another A-League show. Week 1 of the A-League is done, and before we get into talking about the games last week, we've got two big bits of news, one big bit of news and one just nice thing to talk about. The nice thing is Danny Townsend is gone from the A-League. I don't really enjoy talking about CEOs. Like, they shouldn't be seen or heard when it comes to sports. They should really just be background operators. But unfortunately, we had to see Danny Townsend's face too much. But fortunately, we're not going to be seeing it anymore because he's off in Saudi Arabia collecting money he's going to spend on probably shady shit. But the big news, the important news that actually impacts fans is that the grand final deal has been scrapped. Grand finals will go back to the team that deserves it. And instead, we've got some magic round bullshit, which I think looks, terrible overall. Like, I don't really want a magic round in my A-League. But as far as magic rounds go, I think it could have some benefit in improving the league. And just, it's, in any case, an improvement on the grand final. The vague idea of it is that every men's and women's A-Leagues club is going to play a game in Sydney between the 12th and 14th of January. The men's will be playing in an extra round, so now there's 27 games in the men's, and the women's will be playing one of their already scheduled regular season games in Sydney. So, yeah, it's a bit weird with that. Like, I don't know why they wouldn't add an extra round for the women. Actually, it's less successful, although it's been getting pretty big as of late. So, yeah, we want justice for the women, people. But, yeah, games are going to be played at Leichhardt, Combank, and the SFS. And what's it called? I'm pretty sure it's just double headers throughout the weekend, which, go hard or go home. Like, do 3 or 4 matches at a venue a day so people can just kind of sit in their seat like a fat fuck and take in football and expensive food and beer. But yeah, it's going to be double headers. And they're going to put on some things alongside it, like a fan festival, a venue to watch the Asian Cup, and a grassroots football tournament, as well as more, which is something that they tend to add to every event they're planning. And with how the grand final went, if the same people are in charge, it's going to fucking suck. Like, the grand final festival of football was obviously complete and utter dog shit. But I do think it has potential. Obviously, it's replacing the grand final deal, so that already shoots it up in my mind, as well as seemingly everyone's, massively. And, remember, that's what the protest was about. Like, fuck the APL now. But, yeah, initially the protest was just like, hey, guys, can you fix up this? Because the grand final deal is obviously stupid. And they've done that. It's taken them a while, but it's been done. And I feel like they've made some effort, at least, to appease football fans, as well as, obviously have the event that makes the money. So that's good. And I feel like with the Women's World Cup and this kind of being reminiscent of that with the whole festival style, it could attract new audiences, bring new audiences from Women's World Cup and, the wider football community into the A-League, and also create more unity between the men's and women's games at a domestic and, eventually, or also international level. Although, actually, they're pretty equal, at least in Australia at international level. But, yeah, like, I feel there's only a few men's and women's double headers, but I just feel like, especially for people out of town, like, if you can come to Sydney as a Perth fan and do both your men's and women's teams away, and there's like 50, 100 Perth fans there, you're going to have a fucking boss time. Like, obviously, people actually have to make the effort to go, and it'll also, yeah, like, the success will be based off how interested fans are, but, yeah, I feel like there's at least potential there for this to be good. So, yeah, that's the big news, and while overall I don't think it's a net positive for the A-League, I do think that in wake of the grand final decision, this is one of the better decisions we could have got to come out the other side. So, yeah, that's Unite round, but fuck it. Who likes to talk about that administrative bullshit when on the weekend we got the fucking A-League back, which was awesome. Like, I kind of forgot this off-season just how miserable it is not having football on. I mean, I think people call it being happy, but it's wasted time when there's no football on. And to talk about week one in a bit of a critical sense, I got every single prediction I made wrong last week. I predicted the Mariners, Brisbane, Melbourne City, Sydney FC, Perth, and here's the best one. I predicted either Wanderers or Wellington in their game to win, and it ended as a fucking draw. I got every single prediction wrong, which was kind of funny. But yeah, we'll start talking about Friday. Adelaide smashed Central Coast in what was a really good performance. I really talked down Adelaide, and I feel very proven wrong by what they did to Central Coast. They were really good. They made a lot of chances going forward. It easily could have been 5 or 6-0 if not for Danny Vukovic. And I think the only problem I'd say Adelaide had was defensively. But Central Coast couldn't capitalise on it, so they kept a clean sheet. And, maybe Central Coast were good and just had Dylan Wenzel-Halls up top or something. But, overall, Adelaide looked really good. I do want to see more of them before I start hyping them up, but it was probably the most impressive performance of the week, and that's actually a new segment. It's not really a segment, but I put some things out on Instagram for my audience to vote on, and one of them was who were the big boys of the week, who put in the biggest performances, the best performances, and we actually had a tie. Adelaide was one of them, and Melbourne Victory were the other, and I'll be getting into that later. But for now, I do want to talk about Saturday's games because we had MacArthur and Brisbane. They drew in front of, and I don't know if it was sarcastic, MacArthur's record attendance against like a non-Sydney team. It was like 3,000 people there. But same time, I think it was their record attendance. And either way, it's good for them because they get fuck all at their games. But they drew with Brisbane, and I didn't watch the game, so I can't really talk further on it. Same with Western versus Melbourne City. I tried to watch a little bit in the concourse before the Big Blue, but I really wasn't asked standing around that concourse. But I did see that Western United won, and what a massive win for them. I was expecting them to get back into finals this season, and from what I've seen of the game, it looked like they clicked. Botic obviously came up clutch late on, but it looks like Penna was good, and they just overall looked like a good side, and I actually cannot wait to watch their game this week because, I think they're going to be a really good team this season after beating, last season's and the season before's and the season before's premiers. So, massive win for Western. Then, obviously, we had the Big Blue, which was rather depressing. Alongside Victory winning tied best performer of the week in my Instagram poll, Sydney FC won the most disappointing, biggest shit show performance of the week. So I'll talk about that game in more detail later because it won a vote on my Instagram. But we'll move on to Western Sydney versus Wellington, which looked rather dull, but that's not a surprise because Western Sydney and the RBB were involved. So, who wouldn't expect it to be pretty Am I right? But, it did look a poor attendance. It was a 3 p.m. game. I find 3 p.m. Saturday, I could totally do, I reckon. I mean, we hardly get them, but we had the Cup semi-final, and it was great. But 3 p.m. Sunday, that's when you're starting to think about Monday, and it sucks. I feel like you get shit done. I get shit done during Sunday day. So games during then can fuck off, basically. But yeah, it looked like a bit of a snooze fest, but Wellington picked up a point away from home against another final side from last season. So it's a good result for them, and I think it's a shit result for Wanderers because, their expectation at this point is to, be pushing on from last season and challenging for the top 2 spots in the league. And being title contenders at the end of the season. So, yeah, disappointing result from them. But like with every result this week, I'm trying to take stuff from it, but at the same time, it's not the be-all, end-all of teams. Like, I still think a lot of these teams could be the complete opposite of how they played in the first week. So, only time will tell, but not a good start for West Sydney, and I think a good start for Wellington. And then finally, Perth versus Newcastle, which was surprisingly exciting. Newcastle equalised late, Perth got up early. Then I think Grozos pulled one back for Newcastle. Then Perth got up late, and then Newcastle got back really late. And that's all I took from the game because, I mean, I don't care about, I was not watching that game with the intention of what's going to happen? How good's this going to be? I was just watching it waiting for goals, basically. Because, they scored 2 goals each, but they weren't good. Neither of those sides were good. It was an appalling game of football. It was entertaining, but I can't talk about either of those sides being good. I think they look crap. But at the same time, they entertained me for 2 hours, so I don't really want to call them crap. But, that was the week summed up. And as I've already mentioned, it was supposed to be a completely different segment, but I put out polls on my Instagram for people to vote for the best performer of the week and the worst performance of the week because those are the ones that I really want to talk about. It's rare that you're going to get 6 enthralling and, statement kind of games in the A-League over the course of a week. So I wanted to talk about the big teams or the big things, I guess, not the big teams. And 35% of people for each voted Adelaide and Victory as the 2 biggest performances of this week. Obviously, Adelaide dominated Central Coast. I think the only bad thing about them was that they looked a little bit susceptible to the Mariners when they went forward. Like, when Mariners got the ball off Adelaide high up the pitch, and it happened a fair bit, they looked like they could create chances and Adelaide could do very little to stop them. And I think it was only the fact that Quoll was subbed off so early for Dylan Wenzel-Halls that Mariners didn't get a couple of goals. So, I mean, there's definitely more from Adelaide. Adelaide definitely need more than what they showed even against the Mariners. And up the other end, I think they actually played great. Besides their defense, I think they played great, free-flowing, attacking football, but they still missed. I mean, Vukovic saved them, but they missed some as well. I remember Clough hit the post from, the 6-yard box or something where he really should have been putting it in. But, they did miss a lot of chances too, but overall, I think it was a good performance, and if we see more like that, then they're absolutely going to be title contenders this year. So, very exciting stuff for Adelaide. Then, moving on to Melbourne Victory and Sydney FC, who, with a resounding 55%, won shit show of the week on my Instagram poll. We got to talk about that game. I don't know how to approach it. I didn't want them to be fucking combined. I wanted to do this with more order, but I'm here now. So we'll just talk about the game as a whole because Sydney had the attacking vibes that game. I think statistically we had more possession, corners, probably shots. I know we had more free kicks because Bratton was I think it was just Bratton, but no, surely someone else got on some of those free kicks. But we had a lot of free kicks, and we did fuck all with it, is the point. And that happens, but the problem is that it happens too often for Sydney FC, where we go into a game, we have all this attacking vibes, as I called it, and we don't do anything with it. And it's even more inexcusable now because it's the first game of the season, and we got Fabio Gomez in. It's do or die. If Fabio Gomez doesn't work, I highly doubt that Paddy Wood's going to come in and pick up the scraps and score 10 goals or even like 7 or 8 this season. So yeah, it's a little bit worrying, and we could have been smashed that game really. Like, we're kind of lucky it's only 2-0. And there were some pathetic moments too. The Gerwood Wright moment, I don't want to call that pathetic. That was just fucking brutal. Like, you just felt that as a fan. Like, there was nothing the poor kid could do. It was just a bigger dude. It was a fully grown adult running at him, and he just kind of bopped him over a little bit and went on and scored. But nonetheless, it was just so frustrating to watch. And the Bratton goal, watching that back, like, at first, at the ground, I thought like, oh, he's just been dispossessed. But watching the replay, he's been fucking tapped there and chosen to dive, which I've got nothing against. If you get kicked in the leg, choose to dive. But it is the worst dive ever. And surely you just got to weigh up the situation a bit, where it's like you're facing your own goal. The ball's going to a Melbourne Victory player, and maybe he just thought it was the only thing he could do. But he flopped down to the ground like a child who like gets their finger jammed in a door and realizes it got hurt like 5 seconds later, and their only reaction to pain is to sit on the ground or whatever. Like, that's basically what he did. Like, it was mental, fucking stupid stuff. And yeah, like Melbourne Victory, because I'm also supposed to talk about them. They were one of the big performances from my Instagram poll. Never going to stop mentioning it. Yeah, they took their chances. They did ship a few, but like, I remember Ryan Grant, the ball fell to him in the 6-yard box, but they had players surrounding him and it was saved by Izzo. And there were a few other ones, but overall, Melbourne Victory looked solid defensively, comfortable sitting back and taking Sydney FC pressure, and then they made it look easy scoring down the other end as well. And as I said earlier, they could have had more. And in my opinion, what's really scary for the league about that is Tony Popovich for you. Like, that's what he does. He has teams that statistically are worse off than the teams that they play, but they consistently win games because they're efficient and, you know, good at football. And that's what Melbourne Victory looked like on Saturday. So, yeah, they could be in for a resurgent season, but I'd agree with how the voting's gone. Adelaide and Melbourne Victory were probably the two standouts of this weekend. I didn't watch Western, so I can't really say for sure if they were, but they did get a win against the Premiers for the last 3 years, so that's massive as well. As for the shit show of the weekend, I also think Mariners should be put up there because yeah, they were really poor. And I know I mentioned a bunch that Vukovic made saves that stopped Adelaide from scoring, but at the same time, they stopped Central Coast from conceding. And if Vukovic wasn't there, if they weren't playing, you know, a class goalkeeper, could have been 5 or 6-0. And off the back of the grand final, that just seems like a bit of a shit show, especially with the off season that they've had. So, yeah, that's week 1 in a nutshell. Let me know if there's any further thoughts on that. But it's time to talk about week 2. And I'm actually really interested this week because I think 5 of the 6 home games are going to be home openers for teams. So obviously that builds some excitement around them already. And along with that, now that we've got a little taste, a little glimpse of the A-League, this is also how I am with alcohol, by the way. But now that we've got a little glimpse, a little taste of it, I'm excited for so much more. Like, I feel like I know things about the league now. Obviously, I got my predictions wrong last week, but now, having watched just briefly the league again, I speak with the voice of God when I talk about this, and I want to see it come true. So, yeah, we'll start with Brisbane Roar versus Sydney FC. Brisbane's home opener, and it could be the same as 3 weeks ago, where Sydney FC comprehensively beat them, or Sydney could put in a performance like last week, where we just can't score. And I think the defining factor is Brisbane have looked good, but they haven't necessarily looked good defensively. They haven't looked like a side like, you know, Wanderers or Western or Melbourne Victory where, like, you know, they're a defensive side and they sit back and they soak up pressure and counterattack. So I think if it's an open game, Sydney FC could absolutely rip Brisbane apart. But at the same time, they're looking a bit of a threat. The only positive I can take into this game as a Sydney fan is how shit must you be, you drew to MacArthur. So I'm going to predict another 2-0 win for Sydney like the end of last season. But I really think, anything could happen. Like, I'm not confident about that at all. Then we've got Wellington versus Perth Glory, the distance derby. And I reckon it's going to be a good game as well. I believe it's 5 p.m. on a Saturday. And I think both teams had interesting but flawed performances in the first week. So it's going to be cool to see how they go up against each other. I think the one kind of tilting factor is that, although they both played their games on Sunday, Perth are going to have to travel a couple more time zones than Wellington are going to have to. And that could just throw them off a bit, throw off their sleep, just put them out of sorts. And it will definitely be a disadvantage for them. But they did score a couple of goals against Newcastle, and I think they can score a couple of goals again. And Wellington, on the other hand, they didn't get much opportunity against Wanderers, but I feel like against a lesser team, we could see them thrive, especially at home as well, where they can be particularly good. So, I'm going to go for a 3-2 Wellington win. But I think it's going to be close and it's going to be an exciting distance derby. And speaking of exciting, we've got Western United versus Western Sydney. And I reckon we should be allowed to bludgeon people that unironically, but not even people actually. People can do it. Corporations can't. Death to the CEO of fucking whatever Paramount Instagram page posts. It's a Western derby. Fuck them. But otherwise, really exciting match. I think Western United are cooking and Western Sydney are choking. Yeah, I think Western United look good, and I reckon they're going to outplay Western Sydney. They drew with Wellington at home, and they're at home again. I'm pretty sure. Wait, can I just double check that? I'm pretty sure I got all my information right, and yeah, they're at home again. So, could be a big game. Should be a good turnout for Wanderers. They fucking brag about it. They scabbed in the final series last season. Where's their attendance now? But I don't know. I just think Western are looking a good side, and Wanderers were a bit poor against Wellington. So I'm just going to go balls to the wall and predict a statement win for Western United. When I put out my Instagram poll, I am going to be certain that Western United will be winning the big performance of the week next week after this game. This is starting to feel like gibberish, but yeah, I reckon they'll be good. I reckon they've got a lot of players coming of age. Penner, Botic, Lockie Wales. Not really. But I don't know. I see something there. I don't even know if it's real, but it could be. So, can't wait to watch that game either way. Then we move to a Sunday triple header, and I think you can skip the first game. Both of these teams, Mariners and MacArthur, have a cup game on Thursday. Mariners is in Gosford, where the game on the weekend is, and MacArthur's is in fucking Cambodia. So it's going to be a little bit harder of a trip for MacArthur than Central Coast to have 2 home games in a row. They may be able to rest players because the cup's looking a little bit easy for both sides, but there will be some crossover, I reckon. I reckon it's just going to look like a little bit of a tired, knackered game. Both sides have looked crap so far this season, and it's also on during a Sunday, so it could potentially be hot. It's I'm defo going to be fucking busy, and I'm going to predict a 2-2 Central Coast win, because No. Yeah, you know what? Fuck it. 2-2 Central Coast win. That makes no sense. I'm predicting a draw. I just said it, and then I tried to roll with it, but I realized how retarded it sounded. Speaking of retarded, Melbourne Victory take on Newcastle after the Mariners versus MacArthur game. And this is one that I just really don't know about. Because I'm ready to jump on board with Melbourne Victory being good again. Like, I obviously don't want it to happen, but if it's happening, I want to at least be able to recognize it. But I'm not completely sold on them yet because Sydney are a special kind of retarded sometimes. And this isn't meant to be like vitriolic or hateful of like how we play. Like, you know, we have bad games, but we just have that thing where we can go at a team and we can be so much better than them, like holding the ball and getting into their final third, but then we can just be annihilated where it counts. And maybe Newcastle won't be like that and victory could still be shit. But I don't know. I just think Newcastle, really bad side. Melbourne victory, looked a good side week 1 and potentially are a good side. So I'll go a 2-1 win for them. And then finally, I think we've got the game of the week, and it's on a Sunday night because Melbourne City have a cup game on Wednesday in Thailand. But yeah, they're taking on Adelaide United at Coopers Stadium, and this game is going to be massive for both teams. Firstly, for Melbourne City, because they don't want to go 2 games undefeated. Like, a bad start to the season can be mentally detrimental to an unbelievable extent. So, yeah, Melbourne City really need a win here. And Adelaide, as I said, they look good, but I need to see more from them. And if they beat Melbourne City, that's 6 points from 6. Not a lot of teams have won a game yet. So, yeah, they could be on a really good start to the season if they do beat Melbourne City. But I don't know. I reckon it's going to be quite a tight game. Even though Melbourne City are obviously travelling, they might rest some players, but it's less likely because they're in the Champions League. But I mean, it should be less likely, at least, I think. But I just think they've got more quality than Adelaide, who also, yeah, look defensively weak. Like, if it's not true, then, yeah, the Adelaide will probably win. But they looked a bit defensively shoddy against Central Coast. And they didn't take all of their chances. I mean, they didn't even take half of them. So, if they can't score and they're shoddy defensively, I think Melbourne City can still get a result here, especially with the high quality of player they have at their club. But I'm going to predict a 2-2 draw because it's like the second draw I'm predicting this season. And considering a lot of football games do end in draws, I should probably predict them more. So, yeah, that's my week 2 preview. But guys, yeah, I got nothing else to say other than fucking pat on the back me for doing 2 videos in a space of 2 weeks. What a guy. You should be so thankful. But yeah, if you've watched to this point, I think I've talked for about 5 minutes too long. I'll try to keep it a bit more brief next time. But other than that, I thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time I make a video. Bye-bye.